Hello everyone. This is the tutorial on how to make a wonky star block using the kits picked up from the Charity Sew Day drop-off pickup wonky star kits. So when you pick up the wonky star kits, it's going to come in a Ziploc bag like this. You're going to open it up and you're going to find a few items in there. The first is a series of background squares, and don't worry about them matching. They have been curated by Kath, who is our Charity Sew coordinator. So all sorts of good, beautiful background colors. You're then going to find a series of triangles. These are going to end up being your wonky star points. And then you're just going to find a series of scraps here of different sizes. And these are going to be the scrappy center of your star. So the first thing that I like to do is take a moment and arrange these scraps into a minimum size of 5 by 5. And so keep in mind seam allowances. So I always go a little bit bigger. So it looks like there is plenty of background square here if I sew these all together the way that I've laid them out. So I will do that. I will first sew a couple of pieces together. These apart, and then I will do just a little bit of finger pressing here so I can get these together without having to get up and go to my ironing board. So I'm just going to kind of do that with my fingernail like so, and I'm going to try and keep the swan face up. So I think I will line this up here. And I'm gonna try and, so like here, there's a seam, and then I have a seam over here. I'm not gonna line those up because I think it's gonna be more visually interesting if I don't. Okay, so now that these are all lined up, we will sew them with a 1/4 inch seam. I'm gonna make sure that my seam allowances stay the way that I want them. Excellent. And then I'm just going to do the same here, kind of press this with my fingernail. If you have a seam roller, you can use that. I have this doohickey on the end of my stiletto that you can use for pressing, or you can take it to the machine and press. I'm just not doing that because I don't want to get up and down a million times for you. And then we're gonna get the last little bit sewn on here. We're gonna check and see our size. Yep, it's gonna look great. So we need to end up to have a 5 by 5 middle square because all of those background squares are 5 inches by 5 inches. Sew them together. And we'll keep in mind about keeping these seams the way that we want them. And now that everything is all sewn together, we will go and press. So once you're done, you're going to then trim this into a 5 by 5 inch block. I like to do this by moving around my ruler and trying to get the elements that I like into the block. I'd like to keep that swan in there if I can. So just keep in mind your 5 by 5, and I kind of make it a little bit off kilter. So then we trim and trim. Put our bits in the bin, and then rotate, line up at the 5 inch square, trim and trim. There we go. Like so. Looks like when we put this in the final block, this swan is gonna get his neck kind of cut off. So we'll make sure to keep in mind that we'll put that reflection of the swan right side up. So once you have that done, you're gonna set that part aside. And then you're going to work on your background squares. You will, out of the stack of background squares that you have, you're going to set aside 4 to be your plain background. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And a note about this is that you'll see that some of these are white on white, and it can be kind of hard to see which side is the correct side. Just do your best. And then the rest of the squares we're going to use for the wonky star points. So I've got 4 here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the background square, and if I can get these apart, here we go. And I'm going to lay this over and sew a seam here, 1/4 of an inch away from this edge, and then this will end up being folded and pressed that way. So when you put your wonky star points on, you're going to want to make sure that so like say that I wanted to do like this. If I folded this over using that 1/4 of an inch seam, you'll see that this bottom corner is still showing. So this won't turn out to be a very good component of the wonky star block. So you want to make sure you'll have to kind of audition it to make sure that it will cover that entire corner of that background piece. And I like to do these by chain piecing. You don't have to, you can do them one by one. So I will start chain piecing here. Whatever you're most comfortable doing. So there's 1. Make sure the public side, the right side, is facing up. That'll work that way. Don't be afraid of making them a little bit wonky. I know in patchwork, we're used to kind of making things nice and precise. Don't worry about with these. The fun thing about these blocks is that they are wonky. So make them all a little bit different. If you end up messing up and cutting off or not putting this far enough over, you may find that when you flip it over, you're going to have a little more excess, maybe like over here, that you can trim off and then use to cover whatever space that you left open down there. So just take your time, enjoy the process of it being wonky. So I have finished sewing all of these together. I'm going to cut my chain piece apart. And then I'm going to take this over here to the cutting area. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut this white triangle off and then press it open. You're going to want to press it open before you add on the second triangle. So I like to put my 1/4 inch line there. So see, I have a 1/4 inch away. So there's 1. Two. 3. And 4. And then we're going to take this to the pressing table and press these open. Now these are all pressed, and you'll see here that they are overhanging, and when we trim them up, the purple piece will cover the entire white piece that was there. Now I like to put on the other triangle and then trim everything all at once, but you can decide to trim this corner first and then add the second corner and trim again. It's up to you, however you like to piece. So I like to piece by putting on the second piece, and then we'll go up, then I'll go back and trim. Remember to embrace the wonkiness. The key is to not make it perfect. There's one. And you're going to want to put this on the same side as this other triangle. You don't want to put it up here. That's not going to create a star. You're going to want to have it over here. Okay, that'll work. And you'll find once you get started doing these, once you do one, it's so much faster. It's just learning how to do it. Always takes a little bit of time. And we've got our last one. Get rid of some extra thread there. See if that's gonna work. Looks like it. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll cut these guys apart. And then we'll trim the white triangle off by lining up that stitching line with the 1/4 inch. Now you can wait to trim this white triangle part until you press this part open, but I find it's harder to put my ruler down flat when that's pressed. So I like to trim this part off before I press, but you find out what works for you and do whatever works best for you. So now we're going to take these white trim triangle blocks to the pressing table and press those. All right, so now these guys are ready to trim. So you're going to want to use the top and the sides here that have been undisturbed as the beginning of your guides to trim your blocks. So I like to bring that down towards my body, and then I will line it up with the 5-inch line on my ruler here and here. Move these so I don't accidentally get those. And then I trim one side, 2 sides, and then I will rotate and trim the last side. And so now I have some star points, and I'll continue that with the other 3. So you're gonna have 4 total star point blocks. There's 2. Number 3. And here's number 4. See, we got awful close to that corner, but we got the corner. Always good to keep in mind that you're going to be trimming these blocks up. So placing that colored triangle can be sometimes tricky. All right, so now we're done with the ruler. We won't need that anymore. Nor will we need our rotary cutter. So here we are, we're finally ready to assemble our final block. So your center colored scrap square is going to go in the center. And you've got your star points. And then you're going to put you can see that, you're going to put the background squares in the 4 corners. And again, I'm paying attention, a lot of these are white on white prints. So I'm paying attention to put the print side up. But if you end up messing up, don't worry about it, just keep going. All right, so here is the block ready to go. I'm going to sew this together by rows, row 1, row 2, and row 3. When I sew them together, I'm going to focus on my pressing so I can nest these seams. So the top row will be pressed towards these background squares, the middle row will be pressed towards the center square, and the bottom row will be pressed towards the background squares. So let's sew these together. And again, I'm chain piecer. You sew it the way you feel comfortable. Right, and so then I will take the top row. Pin if you feel comfortable. Doing it that way. I like to not pin personally these parts. Cut these apart and we'll press them. I like to always put my blocks in the order that they are so I can keep them on track. So we'll take this to the pressing station. All right, so now we're all pressed. And this is where I like to bring out my pins because I'm going to want these junctions here and here to meet up. So we'll fold down that top row to meet up with the middle row. If I can pick up the middle row. And then you'll see here, let's see if I can, you'll see that I am butting up those two intersections next to each other. And then I'm going to put in a pin like so. You can do some pins at the beginning and at the end if you need to. I like to make sure that at minimum I have those two seam lines that meet up. So now we sew together this row. And then I slow down to make sure that my seams are going the way that I want them to. And then you can press and sew the second one if you want, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to press at the end. So we'll do the same thing here. Line up those seams, put some pins in, and go ahead and sew. I don't like to sew over my pins, so I pull them out. And then we will press this open. And here is the final finished Wonky star. You'll see that like here that I overlapped the triangles up here, and you can see some of the color there, but you can see there it got cut off. That's all great. It looks great. And when you have a full quilt of these stars, it just looks super fun. And I know the kids at Dornbecker will love these. So thank you very much for picking up a kit and putting together these quilts. We love being able to donate all of the quilts to Dornbecker, and please send us an email if you have any questions about this tutorial or any suggestions about any other tutorials you'd like to have in the future.